shared by the American people. And look, it's not complicated. The voters would simply like to have an opportunity to vote for their president before the Senate votes on a nominee. And that's not too much to ask. But President Trump and his party are not interested in hearing the will of the people. In fact, my sense is that they're afraid of what they're going to be told. We are not even debating, okay, this is really important. We're not even debating whether the Senate should hold hearings on a nominee in an election year. We're not in the middle of an election year. We're in the middle of an election, an ongoing election. Almost 1 million Americans have already voted, and more will vote this week and next week, and in just a few weeks, all Americans will have voted. But President Trump and his party don't care. They just want to jam this nomination through as fast as they can. It's called raw power. But President Trump and his party are about to learn something. They may think that it is they who have the power in this country, but they don't. The American people are the ones who have the power. You have the power. And you can make it very clear, very soon, how you feel about being cut out of this Supreme Court nomination process. Even worse, though, than the president and his party ignoring Justice Ginsburg's final wish, is their determination to appoint a justice who will undo her life's work. Let's be clear. The Supreme Court will impact our lives in 3 critical ways. First, President Trump and his party have made it clear they will pick a justice who will get rid of the Affordable Care Act. And in fact, just days after the election, the court will hear a case that could strike down the Affordable Care Act in its entirety. It's a decision that could take away health care for 20 million Americans. It is a decision that could take away protections for pre-existing conditions for more than 100 million people in our country. It's a decision that could take away Medicare benefits for seniors. It's a decision that could toss out the rule that says children can be covered on their parents' health care up to the age of 26. All of that will hurt the millions of Americans who have come to rely on the Affordable Care Act. And what is especially offensive about what President Trump and his party are up to is this. Getting rid of the Affordable Care Act will take us backward to a time where you could charge a woman more for her health care than you can charge a man just because she's a woman. Getting rid of the Affordable Care Act will take us backward to a time when pregnancy could be considered a pre-existing condition. Getting rid of the Affordable Care Act will take away birth control and contraceptive coverage for women. And get this relentless obsession with overturning the Affordable Care Act is driven entirely by a blind rage toward President Obama. And it's happening at a moment when our country is suffering through the ravages of a pandemic that has claimed more than 200,000 lives in our country. Complications from COVID-19, like lung scarring and heart damage, could well become the next pre-existing condition. In short, there are few things they could do that would be more offensive to the legacy and the life of Justice Ginsburg than to return us to the full-scale policies of discrimination in health care toward the women of our country. But that's what overturning the Affordable Care Act will do. And overturning the Affordable Care Act is a way a nominee gets the support of this president and his party. As Attorney General of California, I defended your right to health care. As Senator, I voted to protect your right to health care. But now President Trump has nominated Judge Amy Coney Barrett, and we know where Judge Barrett stands on the Affordable Care Act. Judge Barrett is on record opposing the decision that upheld the Affordable Care Act. As recently as 2017, she specifically attacked the Chief Justice's opinion in an article where she said, quote, Chief Justice Roberts pushed the Affordable Care Act beyond its plausible meaning to save the statute. If nothing else, the voters should be very clear about one thing. President Trump and his party and Judge Barrett will overturn the Affordable Care Act, and they won't stop there. They have made clear that they want to overturn Roe versus Wade and restrict reproductive rights and freedoms. Judge Barrett has a long record of opposing abortion and reproductive rights. There is no other issue that so disrespects and dishonors the work of Justice Ginsburg's life than undoing the seminal decision in the court's history that made it clear a woman has a right to make decisions about her own body. But that's where President Trump and his party and Judge Barrett are. So let's make it clear where we are. Let's vote for health care. Vote for the Affordable Care Act. Vote as if your life, your choice, depends on it, because it does. Make it clear to President Trump and to every Republican senator that if they're determined to get rid of your health care, you'll be just as determined to vote them out of office. And second, vote as if your right to vote depends on it, because it does. In 2013, the Supreme Court's decision in Shelby v. Holder gutted the heart of the Voting Rights Act. Soon after, numerous states, including Texas and North Carolina and Alabama and Mississippi, enacted discriminatory laws designed to suppress the people's right to vote and targeted people of color and students. Justice Ginsburg wrote that the decision was like, quote, throwing away your umbrella in a rainstorm. Right here in North Carolina, a voter suppression law was described by a federal court as having targeted African Americans with almost surgical precision to deny us the right to vote. Surgical precision. After the people of Florida voted to grant formerly incarcerated citizens the right to vote, Republican officials recently enacted a modern-day poll tax to make it harder for those citizens to exercise that very right in this upcoming election. And this modern-day poll tax was upheld by the 11th Circuit Court of Appeals, in large part because of judges appointed by Donald Trump. But you see, here's the thing. He knows he can't win if the people vote. Donald Trump is weak. So he is throwing up every roadblock he can to try and suppress the vote. And we, the people, cannot let him get away with it. Third, what's at stake? Our ability to make a living, take care of our families, and dismantle systemic racism. That's at stake too. For example, so court decisions can determine your ability to earn a living wage, to receive equal pay for equal work, or collectively bargain for your rights at work. With an extra vote on the court, Donald Trump and his party will continue their attack on laws that keep our air clean and our food and water safe, and attack any legislation that addresses climate change. They will also continue to divide us and ignore the the systemic racism that still plagues our society. Their decisions could fail to hold the actors in our criminal justice system accountable. Victims of abuse of power by law enforcement could be less likely to succeed on their civil rights claims. The due process rights of criminal defendants could be less likely to be vigorously enforced. These are the decisions that would upend Justice Ginsburg's life's work to uphold basic liberties of all Americans, regardless of race, gender, sexual orientation, religion, disability, or economic station. Yes, she was part of our culture. Yes, we wear those notorious BIG t-shirts with a lot of pride. But since she passed, there are parents reminding their children that she helped their lives in concrete yet immeasurable ways. Because of her, they could get a job of their dreams, fight for equal pay for their work, marry the person they love, serve the country they love, and enjoy the full rights and privileges of citizenship that they deserve, free of discrimination. And that legacy, her belief in all of us, is at stake. The outcome of this election, more than any other in our lifetime, affects every part of your life and every branch of government, all at once, with consequences that will last generations. And all with a nation in crisis and at a crossroads. The pandemic, the recession, a reckoning on racial injustice, a changing climate, a crisis with the nomination to the Supreme Court. So, I know that it feels sometimes like this is just too much for us to take, too much for our country to take. And I think that's what they want you to believe. They want you to feel tired. They want you to feel like your fight doesn't matter. But we will not give up. And we will not give in. We will not let the infection that President Trump has injected into the presidency and into Congress, that has paralyzed our politics and pitted Americans against each other, spread to the United States Supreme Court. This election is about more than the presidency or the Senate or the Supreme Court. This election is about our democracy. And as Joe Biden has said from the moment he entered this race, it's about the soul of our nation, who we are, what we stand for, and maybe, most importantly, who we want to be. And that's what I felt when I said goodbye to Justice Ginsburg. She understood the soul of our nation and what is expected of each of us. And that belief is especially resonant at a place like Shaw University, one of our nation's first Black landmarks of higher learning, established just 6 months after the Civil War. People born into bondage and brutality stood on this very ground as graduates and as scholars. I stand here at SD Hall, the country's first university hall built to educate Black women in America. A century later, and a few months after the Greensboro sit-ins, Ella Baker and fellow students at Shaw established the Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee that our dear John Lewis would one day lead. I stand here on their shoulders and with all of you as the nominee for Vice President of the United States. I stand with Joe Biden, who will be your next president. I stand with Cal Cunningham, who will be the next senator from the great state of North Carolina. And I stand with them and the American people to to fight for a Supreme Court justice who, like Justice Ginsburg, truly believes in equal justice under law. May God bless Justice Ruth Bader Ginsburg. May God bless you all, and may God bless the United States of America.